and it is 7:04.
Okay, calling the meeting of the Historic District Review Board to order. The first thing on the agenda is 2931 Rock Street. And the question that I have really has to do is, do we have a representative of the applicant? Is that you, Luke?
We can't hear you, but
Sorry, I am here on behalf of the applicant, William McComish.
Okay.
Yeah.
If that is the case, then what I'd like to do is turn it over to you. And if you could describe for us the project that we would be reviewing.
Yes. So what I'd like to start out with two items really. I know this matter was discussed at length last night at the Board of Trustees meeting. I'm going to try to stay away from the discussion there as much as possible, because I think, what we're here before this board for is this application. And this is it's an application that we submitted. I met with Ms. Mountain on two separate occasions. We reviewed the code, talked about what would be required. She made a determination to issue the building permit. Since that time, she has revoked the building permit based on additional information that she's gathered. And so we are now before this board. What we're looking to do is, the property at 2931 Rock has a small driveway with a single parking space that comes off of Rock Street. Towards the end, about a house in from Kemble. We're looking to extend that driveway up the south on the property, which is up a steep incline. There's a large rock outcropping, and I believe that's the natural resource that this board is considering, the historical significant resource that this board is considering today. We do need to disturb that rock outcropping to some extent. I've spoke with Mr. McComish about it. There will be, it's not just facial, it's only a few feet of disruption, but that does need to be carved out, and ultimately there will be, it levels out on top, and he's looking to have some parking up there. The way it currently exists, as I said, there is one parking space. That parking space is mostly on his property, somewhat on the village property. And then there is a little bit of parking kind of on the edge of Rock Street, as there is throughout the village on the edge of a lot of streets. This would solve the problem of not having to worry about parking on Rock Street and on what is village property. He did approach the village previously in an attempt to purchase that little section of property so that he could better utilize it for his parking. That request was denied. So we're just looking to continue this up to the top of the property. There is access to the house from the top. It'll allow him to access the property from there. That's what we're before this board for.
Okay.
Luke, do you have the ability do you have any of the application materials on your own computer to share? Otherwise, I would share them.
I do. So what we've submitted, and just if I could speak to some of what was pulled, I believe, from the file. So I met with Miss Mountain a while back, and I had an old drawing that Mr. McComish had done by River Architects. That was a drawing that was done in consideration of possibly other projects. I believe at that time, James Hartford met with the village board to discuss it, and ultimately it was determined that it would be very complicated and probably wouldn't be approved. So I brought one of those drawings with me. It has a listing of a proposed house on there, and we were kind of talking informally about it. I wrote my contact information on and left that with her. Somehow it seems that it got included as part of the original submission. We did then include another drawing that just shows the driveway on it. But I want to be clear that River Architects is not involved in this project. This is, we had an existing site plan, an existing drawing from then that we added the driveway on. We hand drew the driveway on to indicate its location and approximate size in order to apply for the building permit. So
All right.
those are the items that we're going to be looking at. It's really just that one survey that has the driveway drawn on it. And then there are a couple pictures that show the existing driveway parking area.
Okay,
I believe I can. I've never done a screen share, but I will
If
authorize
you
it.
aren't able to, I can do it on your behalf if you'd like.
I will
but-
authorize a screen share, which will, so let's share, I'm gonna share this. No, so let's share this.
I think it has to be passed on. Okay, got it.
There, yeah.
Did that work there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So perhaps I can zoom in on it a little bit.
Well, I mean, I think we have seen this, and I'll speak for the other board members because it has been distributed. But the question is that, you know, I see a line and an outline, but I don't understand, or at least the drawing does not tell us what the scope of work is. I mean, what are you doing to the rock, and to what extent? I mean, this is just an outline in plan, so
Right.
I just don't understand. You're asking us to approve something when it's not clear what it is that we're approving.
Okay.
Yeah, to add to that too, it's not clear to me what size anything is, what the slope or grade is along the driveway, how drainage is handled, all of that. All of that sort of information is missing.
Right. Well, the sloping drainage information, you know, when I met with Ms. Mountain, we actually looked through the code and discussed that as
Mhm.
to, you know, what would need to be provided as to that. The code does not, in her opinion, have a requirement for that.
For what?
Mhm.
For you know, what will be disrupting as far as the slope. And so the scope of how the rock will be addressed is dependent upon really what happens when he gets there. There's no intent to, there aren't any retaining, you know, it's really just to smooth out what is there. There have been, you know, over the years, Mr. McComish has used that and he has driven up it himself, has had other people drive up it. So there is a bit of a pathway. It's not easy for a two-wheel drive as it is, and it's really just to make it a little bit easier. So it will be a bit of carving of the rock. Some item 4 will be the ultimate, is going to be the ultimate plan of what would be provided there.
Well, the thing is that what our interest in this application is, in fact, the visual aspects of this driveway. Now, you're telling me, and from the photographs, obviously there's a big chipping machine sitting at the top of the rock.
Yes.
The question then is, how much are you going to chip away? What is going to be at the top there? You know, how much of that rock formation is being demolished? What are the surfaces at the site? How deep does it go down? I mean, these are all questions that we need to understand in order to be able to make a judgment.
Right. So I mean, visually from the road, it will not look, other than the fact that there will now be an identified path, it will not look significantly different. You know, as I said, there won't be retaining walls built in. The plan is to remove as little of the rock, I'm sorry, as is required. It may be a few inches in some places. It may be, you know, a foot or two in others. that's really all we're looking to do is, as Mr. McComish gets on in age, and he said, he's going to have a grandchild soon. He wants to be able to access the top of that property, have people be able to park up there and to utilize it. So we can provide whatever additional information you're looking for as far as how much of the rock will be disrupted. It won't be anything like we see over on 3 or on 15. It's the intent is as little disruption as possible. And Mr. McComish is on, maybe he can speak to that a little bit more because he's more intimately involved in dealing with the contractor, but that's our plan.
Well, okay. I understand that, but that still doesn't tell me, or maybe, Sean, why don't you put up one of the photographs as far as a view up the proposed driveway?
Okay,
I stopped sharing, Sean, if that helps.
great. I will first share some current photographs that have been taken. And then we also have some historic, well, pre-existing images that we can share as well. So these aren't in any particular order, so I'll just scroll through them if you'll bear with me. So these photos were all taken after the work began. Some, as I said, were submitted by the building inspector, some were submitted by the applicant, and some were submitted by the members of our board.
Okay.
Okay. See, it's not
These
clear.
are the adjacent properties that were submitted by the applicant.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So I guess my question is that so far, the only thing I've heard are qualitative remarks. I don't have any, I still don't have any idea of looking at that, how much of that is going to be chiseled out. As little as possible, what does that mean?
If I could, just because I have not had any conversations with the contractor, so why don't I ask Mr. McComish to speak to that, if you would, and then I can come
Okay.
back. And Bill, if you take yourself off mute, you can.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
we can.
Yes, we can.
Okay, good evening. I want to thank everybody for coming out to this and paying close attention. And I think, Alan, you were on there when we renovated the cottage at the top of the hill. I was before the board then, which is to the right of the machine in this picture.
Okay.
Anyway, so here you have the little slope that comes from, can you see my pointer or no?
No.
Yeah.
Okay, so if
No.
you look at the street, the blacktop or the macadam, and then you see where the gravel begins.
Yep.
So that
Okay.
slope going up and towards the right, where the parking space was, is a little bit more than the grade that we would expect once we're going up the hill. Now, and when you get past the original gravel and where the rock begins to be chipped there, right in that first, I don't know, so many feet where you can see the chip rocks, not all the way up to the, what do you call it? Not all the way up to the plywood barricades, but much further down. It's only a few feet. That would approximately be the grade from the street, from the blacktop going straight up to there. And then there's a high spot, which is in front of the plywood barricades, which needs to be leveled off. And then beyond the barricades, most of it's already done all the way up to where the machine is. And then just a little beyond the machine is another little high spot. Now, overall grade, when we would be done, would be about 14 degrees. So it'd be actually less than the grade from the blacktop going in the current driveway up to the parking space, just a little bit less. So let's see, what else could I say about that? I think that's,
Well, okay, so I hear what you're describing. And am I correct that what you're describing, you're telling me that it's pretty much all done? There's some leveling out, but that's about it. Is that correct?
correct. So from the gravel driveway that's there to where the rock chipping begins, that part is pretty much done. And then just, let's say 10 feet or so in front of the barricades, that's one high spot. And then beyond that, definitely beyond that, up to where the machine is, that's all been done already. And if he turns the machine around, and behind the machine is another high spot that needs to be leveled out some that he already started on. And where the parking would be at the top, I know you see in the drawing where we hand drew it in, with a little like square at the top of the driveway. That would be a little bit further in towards the property, not towards the property line, but in towards the property, because the rock at the top was very hard. And in order to avoid that very hard spot and making lots of noise and spending lots of time, we changed the course slightly to go in towards the property. And at the top up there, there's a flat spot that doesn't really need to be chipped or level because it's already flat. So that would save quite a bit of disruption and time, energy, money, and the rock and noise.
Okay, but see, all of those things that you described are not shown on the drawing, and not shown
Well, we
on
didn't
the.
know until we got to the, started it.
Okay, well, I think that's part of the problem that we have, is that what we need to have some idea of what it is that you're asking us to approve.
Mhm.
And I think that the problem is that the drawing that we had, whether, and it doesn't sound like it was intentionally prepared, but it was submitted to us, really doesn't have very much information on it. So, that puts us in a very difficult position of approving something which is not clear, and it doesn't sound like there is a specific or a final product that, well, certainly there's nothing shown on the drawing which is the final product, because you're talking about 2 spots, you're talking about essentially not a hell of a lot more rock to be chipped out. So
Well, yeah, Chairman, if it would please the board, I guess you're asking if we can provide some sort of a topo with
well,
that specific information, or
it certainly needs to. It needs to be more descriptive of the proposed work.
Okay.
So,
Mr. Chairman, if I may for a second, this is John First, the attorney for the village.
yes,
Look,
John.
I think you're right. I think they need to see a little more detail. I don't know if it has to be like as detailed as a topo, but they kind of need to see on your little survey where the rock outcroppings show up, and
Okay.
where the driveway is going to traverse over those rock outcroppings, so they can kind of figure out where the disturbance and where the change is going to lie.
Okay.
And the other thing I think would help is if you have any before and after pictures, so they can kind of do a comparison of what was before and see what the construction is now, and then look at the plans, what the end result's going to be, so they can kind of do an analysis that way.
Okay.
Give some before we can share.
Yeah, I think our
What-
before pictures are somewhat limited, because of the fact that we went to, like I said, I met with Miss Mountain a few times. It wasn't referred to this board before the permit was issued. The permit was issued, and in good faith, he started the project. So
Right.
had we anticipated that, we would have certainly have some better before pictures, but we
Right.
can rustle up some from adjacent, just from pictures over the year, I'm sure.
Yeah, I
Oh.
think just do the best you can under the circumstances. And then, like I said, I mean, I don't think the plan has to be like topos and everything, but they need to kind of know where this rock outcropping is in relation to the driveway and how
Right.
much of this rock outcropping is going to be disturbed.
Okay.
Let me ask this one question. What is the maximum depth in anywhere along this driveway that still needs to come out? Maximum depth of the rock.
Bill, I don't know if you want to speak to that. We
I
did
could say
discuss.
something. It's at best a guesstimate, but I would say about 2 feet. However, it won't be a 2-foot dip. It would be, that would be filled in, leveled off with the item 4. So then it would, when you looked at it, it would just be a smooth transition all the way up. There would be no waves or dips or anything like that. So I'm not so sure if the depth of the cut will impact the final appearance.
All right, well, if you're going down 2 feet, are you going to have sides to this, to where the 2 foot comes out?
I don't think it's going to be necessary once you put the item 4 in, is what I'm saying.
What's item 4?
Where the high spots are, it might be lower. More might come out, but once it gets leveled off with the item 4, it'll all be pretty much a level straight run up the hill.
All right, I guess for the benefit of for those of us who are not savvy as far as the DOT criteria, what is item 4?
It's similar to what you see in the picture in the existing parking area.
Oh, yeah.
It's that gravelly.
So gravel dirt mixture.
Oh, it's like a grade 4 gravel or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think if you go to one of the pictures of the van, you'll see that it's that
Mhm.
that same gravel.
And
So it would really just be a continuation of what's there, kind of where the cursor is up that rock face is exactly what's happened.
so is the plan then to, or was the plan to remove the rock that was necessary and then put down some layer on top of the rock between the gravel and, I mean, what's going to prevent this gravel from just constantly rolling down the hill onto Rock Street? Is there some other barrier between the exposed rock face and the gravel? Or is the gravel only going to be used to fill in the dips that go below grade?
I'm not 100% sure. That would probably be up to the excavator, but the one that we have there now, as I said, the little driveway that you're looking at in this picture, is a steeper grade than what we'd end up with. And that remains in place because it's been compacted.
Yeah, is that sitting directly on the bedrock, or is there a soil layer or anything between it? Do you know?
Don't believe there's much soil below it. There might be a little bit, but I'm pretty sure, especially to the left side, it's sitting right on the rock.
And I think whatever would be necessary in order to prevent that, certainly from Mr. McComish's expense too. He doesn't want to be replacing it every year anyway. So that would be, whatever the contractor recommends in order to prevent that. That's the goal, is to have something that will remain in place, and it actually probably provide a little bit more drainage than the sheer rock face.
So ultimately then, just to be clear, once this is complete as proposed and all of the loose, I'm going to say gravel to distinguish it between the bedrock, is added, there will be no surface of the rock outcropping visible. Is that right?
No, that
Not
would be
within the driveway.
not in the driveway, correct. The driveway would be about, somewhere between about 10 feet wide.
Okay. And just going back to the proposal, because I know, Bill, you mentioned that the actual parking area has to move at the top of the hill. Is the size that it's drawn on this image accurate, or because it looks like it's bigger than the size of the house itself? Is that the case, or was that also just an estimate?
Well, I think it was, enough space to turn around in up there. That's what it was. And the flat spot that we found, that I said, doesn't need to be chopped or chipped to accommodate that up where the driveway is headed now.
All right, which image are you talking about, Sean?
I'm just talking about the drawing that they submitted, the one dated 10/15.
All right, can you show that?
Yeah, just the same that Luke was showing before, but I can.
Right, I just want to take a look at that because it looks like it was a square spot, and so if we're talking about a turnaround, I would assume it'd be more circular, but
It's flat. It's flat up on top of the up on top as it exists currently. So that's again why that area was hard to. That was part of the discussion we had with Miss Mountain, was based on the topography and what chipping needed to be done. We wanted to avoid areas of higher ground, and we wanted to make it as easy as possible for the excavator. So we weren't positive that it was going to end up there, and that's why she just said, draw a little proposed area where it'll end.
Okay.
I guess what's difficult for me is that I don't know what here is existing to remain as is and what portion is being chipped away. I don't know if it's like 10 feet wide, like somebody said, or whether it is 10 feet wide or 10'3" or 9'9". It's just
Sure.
not clear to me where the work is really happening. I guess I could care less if it's flat at the top and you're just trying to get there and you actually park, outside of that square. It's not important to me, I guess. If it's already flat and you're not disturbing anything, I don't know what's happening along the driveway.
Well, we can certainly
The
indicate.
width of it, the way it's drawn, it's almost as wide as the house, which is definitely not 10 feet. So, and like I said earlier, I don't know how far I can really get into this, but being in related fields, I have concerns about the grade, whether you can get up it, what the drainage is like. Already in this town, when it rains, it's like a river down Main Street, and this is all just going to flow down Rock Street and then down Main Street. So are we creating a situation where there's more runoff? I don't know that. And something that Sean mentioned also, there's no sort of way to address keeping the gravel in. I don't know that it's going on the same surface that it's on now. I think right now it's probably on top of some of the asphalt, which maybe retains it a little bit more than it might be retained on top of rock. I'm concerned it's all going to wash away into the neighbors, into the street, into the pedestrians use the street too. Just there's a number of questions come up.
And I think something else to take into consideration, and this isn't strictly an HDRB thing, but to Lloyd's point, a lot of the vegetation has been removed or appears to have been removed compared to the earlier images. And that's something else that could affect the overall, movement of water around the site.
Right. Well, we could, we will certainly, you asked to indicate the areas that'll be disturbed, the specific areas of the rock that will be disturbed. We will be able to I don't know that we can provide that it will be 22 inches or 25 inches, but we can certainly provide a pretty good indication of how much of that will need to be disturbed at this point. I think, because of the fact that some of the work has been done, we now have a better understanding of what more needs to be done. So we'll be able to indicate that. We'll certainly provide the width of the driveway on the plans. We'll try to we'll include we'll move that, show the movement of the parking area will now exist, and we can provide a size of that. Mr. McComish can provide a size of that. As to the drainage and the retention of the substrate on the property, that we can certainly speak to the contractor and or an engineer about, and provide the board with information. I don't know, just as far as I'm thinking through it, we can't have kind of a catch-all at the bottom of the property. That would be something that would have to drive over, but certainly we can provide what their recommendation is and compare it to what is there currently, so that we can say, okay, their recommendation is X, Y, and Z, but what we have there is a totally different mechanism, and it's been successful, what's there, so maybe we want to consider it that way. So certainly we can provide that to the board, so you have that information in front of you.
Right. I think something just for your, when you're kind of laying out your thoughts, obviously we're concerned about the materials that are going to be used and the materials that are going to be added to the space, but we can't ignore how those materials are going to kind of last, and how well they will work, and how sturdy they will be to remain, because thinking of an entirely different set of materials, if we know that somebody is going to be using a type of metal on a building that might look good for a year, but after that is going to not look good, then that's obviously something that would factor into our judgment. So I think in this case, we are addressing the erosion in the water, not from a sort of health and safety standpoint, because that's not our responsibility, but more from a standpoint of how durable the final product is going to be. So just for a point of clarification, when you're getting information from the contractor.
Yeah. Absolutely. And
could we go back to the drawing for a moment?
Sure.
Yeah, I just want to share, obviously I think Mr. McComish shares that, notwithstanding the fact that he's been a resident of Rock Street for however many years and wants it to continue as such, he doesn't want to be replacing, he wants something that's durable. He wants something that's going to last as well. So they have the expense of replacing it over and over again. That is a shared interest from an aesthetic standpoint, but also from a practical standpoint.
Okay, so if you look on the screen to the right of the driveway, you'll see two dashed lines. And if you look further up, you'll see that it says that there's 10 feet in between them. So that's the scale, the 10 feet. Right. And the driveway is approximately the width of those same width as between those two dashed lines. Now, when you get up to where we are behind the little cottage there, the dwelling, it veers off slightly towards the inside of the property, away from the property line. And when you get up to where this little square is drawn, it also is a little bit to the left of where the property line is. And that area, all that area is already flat. A huge area up there is flat. So nothing really has to be done. As far as the material, we have the other driveway and parking space there for many years. I mean, this property's been in my family for 42 years. And we haven't had any problem with any of the gravel or anything washing down. But this is item 4, which is a crushed bluestone that once it gets compacted, it doesn't move much, but it does drain well. So right now, if you were there on a rainy day, or I should say in the past, you would see like a river coming down the rock before we even put this item 4 in here, and it come down like a river. But this is actually slowing it up, the item 4. And if we did that all the way up, it actually improved the drainage. So instead of having a really steep slope and a really slick surface for the water to run down, you'd have a much more gradual slope. And the item 4 would allow it, because it's porous, would allow the water to drain better.
All right,
I don't know
I
anything
think,
about that. I'm not an engineer. I usually rely on an engineer's drawing to provide that sort of information, as well as solutions
Well,
to retain.
okay,
Yeah.
well, the only thing, Lloyd, is
But-
the drainage is not
Yeah.
something which is our
Right.
purview.
I
Uh,
mentioned that. I agree.
I think that one of the things that that we need to do before we can, render a judgment on this, we do need to have an upgraded drawing, and it could be on the same sheet, but it needs to clearly indicate, if nothing else, how much further any excavation of the rock and how much chipping needs to be done where, because that's not clear at all. And we have no way of knowing what that's going to look like when you're finished. And ultimately, the appearance of whatever remains is, in fact, one of the things that our board is very interested in. So I think that certainly the drawing could be a starting point, but what we need to have is some dimensions. You mentioned foot width, and it looks like it's drawn roughly to scale. But if that's the case, that dimension should be noted on the drawing. If there is another flat spot somewhere along the way, then you should indicate that. I think it doesn't have to be an engineering drawing, but it has to be clear enough to convey what the intentions are as far as the construction goes. Some of the engineering aspects, I'll leave that up to the building inspector. I think that she will have to evaluate whether or not the engineering is sufficient. I mean, as well as some of the safety issues that were raised in the letter from the neighbors.
Yes.
Would she also be looking at the or I don't know, is the parking area at the bottom, which I think is off the lot, is that staying or is that being returned to street, and how so? With what kind of repairs? Again, I know that's not our, except for the materials and the appearance, that isn't our purview, but is that something that
The intention
Code
is
is-
to leave it
Okay.
as it currently exists.
Okay.
We understand that if this board is inclined to improve the project, we will be back and, meeting with the building inspector, and certainly to address the concerns of the neighbors from a safety standpoint, as well as the other, I think the other engineering concerns.
Well, there are 3 issues. These are not our issues, and I'll defer to the building inspector. She's the one who controls the process. But from what I saw in the letter from the neighbors, you've got an issue as far as projectiles from chipping process, the vibration affecting people's foundations, and the drainage. So certainly one of the things that is the vibration on people's property or structures. Certainly one of the things would be to go around and photograph the conditions to make sure that you have what the existing conditions are, as opposed to any subsequent condition that may be found after you're finished with whatever excavation you're going to be doing. So, but again, those are not our issues. That is something that you need to work out with the building inspector. And so when do you think you would be able to have a revised drawing which shows a greater clarity of what it is that you're proposing?
When is the next meeting of this board? Is it in 2 weeks?
Well, I think that raises a good question, Al, because, you know, while a type of well, can I ask another question first, just before we move on to the business of the application?
Right.
It was just, I just was wondering on as far as the drawings are concerned, you know, it looks like, I don't know if people can see my cursor, but because you've only drawn from the property line in, is and Rock Street is a one-way street. So is it going to be such that a car entering the driveway is going to have to reverse into the driveway, or is there enough space to turn without disturbing more of the end of the sort of delta of the driveway as it pertains to the house next door? Maybe I'm not saying this very clearly, but you know, it looks like there's this little area of grass here, or moss and grass. Is that going to have to be extended or widened so that when somebody's coming from the south, they're able to actually turn the car all the way around to get up the hill?
Okay, I can speak to that if I may.
Sure.
If you look at this drawing, can you zoom in on this a little bit? This picture, I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry. I forgot that you guys are seeing what I'm seeing. Yeah.
And now you see the car in the driveway, and there's a little, just to the right where the mirror of the car be, there's a little pink ribbon hanging down there. Right where you're pointing, yep.
Okay.
Now that is the property line, which goes through the car, across behind the tree, and almost to the corner. So all this driveway and all this is part of my property.
The driveway of the house, this driveway of the house next door?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
More than half of it's on my property. And if you look at the drawing, it shows it. If you want to go back to the drawing for a second, if you can do that.
I think that part we're looking at is on village
And
property.
you see this, where is it now? The solid line, where it says existing parking space.
Yeah.
The word space, and see where it goes? It goes right across that driveway, and it keeps going almost to the corner. So all that part of the driveway that's on the screen above that line is on my property. Well, part of it's on village property too. A little part of it, but most of it's on my property. So that could be incorporated, and it would be something similar to what's at 3 Rock Street, but not quite as big. I
The
think
way
this
I
is
see
picture
it, none of
that's
it, the way I see it, there's only a little triangle that's on your property. The property line is the dashed line. The 2 short dashes and the long dash. I'm wondering,
Right.
too, can you come up Rock Street heading towards the east-ish and make such a turn with people parked across the street also? Anyway,
Yeah, there's room.
and you know, how do you enter the driveway? Does it need to turn?
Yeah, you need to make a right and go right up the driveway. There'll be room.
If I can interject for a second. I think that's really like a curb cut question for the building inspector. And I think you should have the building inspector confirm that as far as, you know, turning into the driveway. And I guess from your perspective, I think you're kind of asking the question, so to see if more rock outcropping needs to be disturbed, because if they do have to swing wider, I do see some more rock outcroppings over there that could potentially be disturbed. So I guess in that context, you know, I think that's your concern.
Right. My concern is basically, you know, we have this area right here, which clearly visually separates the driveway, you know, on the left and the current
Right.
parking area on the right. Is that all going to become one contiguous piece of driveway, parking,
Right.
paving, combination of rock?
So- Right. So, and I think, so Luke, that's one of the things you kind of need to highlight on the plans.
Okay,
Is the existing curb cut, is that going to work? And again, showing, where all the existing rock outcroppings are on the entire property, and where the driveway is going to specifically traverse those rock outcroppings. Is it going to be wider down at the bottom to make up for that tight turn? Because if it is wider, it may impact more rock outcroppings than it's currently showing. So I think that's the concern. But as far as whether that works, there's a curb cut permit that the building inspector, and I think this was actually an existing curb cut.
that's correct.
So, I mean, that's definitely the purview of the building inspector. But I guess from your perspective, you just want to make sure additional rock outcroppings won't be disturbed. So Luke, I would kind of follow up on that as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think when you're preparing, because obviously, to Bill's point, when we're looking at the drawing from above, it's not as clear, and at the end of the driveway, what is the neighbor's use driveway. So even if you could just, with a pencil or whatever, kind of annotate a photo of the space too, just to let us know, just to visualize what more is going to happen.
Take kind of a more direct photo.
Yeah, just
Okay.
because we're talking about what we need to be able to get an idea of what the final end result is going to look like.
Sure.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Andrea has been on the call for a while, our fourth board member. So I didn't announce it when she arrived, but she's been here and been.
Yes, hello. Sorry, I got a call from the New York State Contact Tracers Program, so it was a little urgent.
Yeah,
But I'm here.
don't want to make those people wait.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go back to the drawing.
To the drawing. Okay.
You want me to do it or you want to do it?
Yeah. Do you mind doing it? Sorry, Luke. I have a lot of windows open.
No
We did get we do have a something from the a member of the planning board. We will allow for them to make a comment. Is that okay?
Yeah, Matt, I mean, let me ask the question because I know it was raised. Matt, do you see anything here which should be referred to the planning board for evaluation or review?
Look, I have limited information, but as far as I can tell from the contents of the application, I think the building inspector was clear in her interpretation of the code, and sees that a curb cut exists. It's an extension of a driveway. There is a legal side yard setback that it is going in. Not easy to achieve. I get that you guys have to look at it. I guess my question is, it appears it's the only place for the driveway to go, right? It doesn't look like there's anywhere else for it to go. So I can certainly understand, the building inspector's view of this application. I would say it's a good call, but I don't really see anything that the planning board would normally get involved in.
Okay.
I mean, if it were an I-1, it's not being used as an I-1 site, and there was comment yesterday that it's a use. A driveway, in my opinion, is not a use. People in the business and even building inspectors will talk about use, even hardscape being a use. That's not what we're talking about here. What the planning board does it is currently a residential use. A driveway is an as of right part of a residential use. We're lucky, they are lucky, we're all lucky that they have a conforming side yard, and it appears it's the only place it can go. So I think, no, I don't see anything here that the planning board would normally look at. Certainly not in a formal way, and obviously the boards can ask the planning board questions, but no.
Okay.
Well, let me just ask you something, Matt, just about that, because you said there's nowhere else for the driveway to go. Is there any requirement that this property have a driveway as far as the planning board is concerned? To be a residential parcel or a multifamily parcel?
A requirement? No, but is there,
Oh.
there is certainly no restriction that it can't. In fact, it's a right that it can. So I'm not sure where you're going.
I'm just asking because I didn't know if there was some planning or zoning requirement that
Well,
the
Tech-
Access is always better for ambulances, fire trucks. Yes, I mean, but no, it isn't. There isn't a mandate that the planning board goes through and looks at life safety issues and starts,
I mean, the only thing is,
enforcing code.
you could argue from, like it would add off-street parking spaces.
Right.
That way there would be less people parking in the lot, less people parking in the village lot, less people parking on the street. So, and I don't know if the code specifically calls out, but sometimes you need 2 spaces per off-street parking spaces per residential unit. So,
It is supposed to be 2 for a residential unit.
right. So from a planning perspective, this would actually create off-street parking spaces, which would be a positive. And like Matt said, from health safety reasons, fire truck access, that could also help out. So, but I don't, planning board doesn't have jurisdiction. That's what the building inspector has opined. So, and that's what we're kind of running with. I think the neighbors raised some good questions and some good issues about the erosion, drainage, but I think those issues can be addressed with the building inspector. It's really, this board needs to kind of focus on the appearance and the impacts with respect to the visuals and the rock outcroppings and how much it's going to be disturbed. Not so much, drainage, soil erosion. That's really just something the building inspector can handle. The noise, all those items the building inspector should be able to handle.
I agree with you, but all of those issues affect the end appearance. So I can focus only on the appearance ultimately, but I can't tell what the appearance is from give me a second. I can't tell what's the appearance is from what's submitted, and the grade, the drainage, the materials that are required to deal with water, the way the material is held in at the street, the way the driveway widens to allow for a turn, all of that affects the appearance in the end. So pardon me if I got too technical about all of that stuff before, but that's why. That's definitely why. Because in the end, you see what you see based on all of those factors.
Okay. What I'd like to do is go over the document and describe what further information we need in order to conduct our review. And then after that, I think after we go over it, you can tell me, when do you think that you would be ready to come back to us and show the revised drawings?
Okay.
All right.
Yes.
So, Sean, if we can go back to the plan. Or Luke, can you go to
I
the
can,
plan?
yeah, I can do that. Sorry.
I know I'm supposed to be the expert on this, but
No, I
mean,
if that works,
Okay.
I'm just
Okay.
every time I feel like I'm like learning to ride a bike. Okay, hold on. Here we go.
All right. All right. I think if you could pull back just a little bit, just a tiny bit. Okay, that's good. I think that we'd like to see the driveway all the way extended to the curb cut, so that at least we have a clear idea of the extent, a dimension on the width of the driveway. And then in each area where you're going to be removing additional stone, that should be either hatched or highlighted somehow, so that we can see how much additional material is in fact going to come out. That, and also one of the things that we would like to see is where you're going to have a side to the driveway. In other words, if you're chiseling out stone, are we going to see a little bit of a wall to the side? What does that look like?
Okay.
And I think identify the two flat areas that you're talking about. And indicate roughly, this is not something that, we're going to, that needs to be done by a surveyor, but certainly you should be able to identify roughly, the difference in the heights. In other words, there's a certain portion of it, for example, typically with a ramp, you have a starting point and then you have a termination point. So you would show a ramp up or driveway up, flat area, driveway up, flat area. And so if you could identify those areas. Is there anything else that we would want to say?
I think just when you mark the areas that where further excavation is needed, if you can just annotate the approximate depth that's needed. I know, I mean, it doesn't have to be exact to a fraction of an inch, but is it, there's a big difference between 4 inches and 24 inches of excavation.
Right.
So you can identify.
We can certainly indicate what was existing prior to, us doing anything there.
Yeah.
Certainly provide, since we're doing this, and I know, again, it's not the ultimate goal here, but we will provide as much information as we can on the material and how it will be retained.
Okay, then also the areas where you are going to be doing further excavation, I think that we'd like to see some photographs and note on the drawing, with a circle and a little arrow pointing where the photograph was taken, so that we can sort of get a visual of the area where more stone is coming out.
Okay.
Also, do we need to address, I heard something about the sheds being demolished. Does that need to be addressed?
Well, let me, I think as part of the document that's going to be submitted, one of the issues that was raised in the letter from the neighbors is whether or not this is a continuation or a way of getting around the introduction of additional construction. And am I correct that this is strictly to provide this driveway? Is that correct, Mr.
That is correct. We certainly understand if, like I said, Mr. McComish did consult with architects previously and consulted with a prior board about the possibility of doing anything else with the property. That's where these original sketches came from. We understand that those discussions didn't go well. So this is what he is looking to do.
Okay.
There's no, I'm very familiar with the process here. There's no runaround here,
Right.
end around here. This is, if he decided he wanted to try to put up a 37 unit apartment building, we'd know we'd have to be in front of the board. If he decided he
Right.
wanted to put up a larger shed, a 20 by 20 shed, we know we would be back in front of the board. So anything that if there was ever anything that came out of this, it would certainly need to be done before all the appropriate agencies. This is
Okay, fine.
this is the driveway.
Yeah, all right. And so I guess what we would like is an affirmative statement, which goes along with the drawings saying no additional, this is the complete scope of work. There's no additional work, something like, on along that line to indicate that this is it. You know, there is no no other part of this.
Okay, I'm not sure what that statement would look like. That's
How about something like, you know, the work shown on this drawing is the entire scope of work. There is no further work anticipated. Or
I
there
think what
is-
Al's getting at is that if there's markings or annotations on your, I don't know whether you're planning on reusing this drawing again or getting a new drawing or whatever it is, but it just needs to be clear that everything that's visible on the drawing pertains to the driveway work. And in the case of, you know, this drawing shows that there were 2 sheds. We understand the sheds have been demolished. I cannot speak to their integrity or historic value because I never saw them and we never had an application to remove them, but we just want to make sure that the drawing that you submit is exclusive to the driveway work and can't be misinterpreted as approving other, you know.
That's not a problem. I will
That's what
certainly, I can prepare that document.
Okay.
I'll speak with John, maybe go over the language with him about that, because I certainly can't bind, you know, my client in the future or any potential purchaser of this property of anything that could potentially come out of it, you know. This
Right.
could be rezoned and, you know, he's now allowed to do something different. I don't want this, you know.
Right.
The language I've
understand.
seen in the past is something like the elements shown in these drawings represent the entirety of the work under this application, number,
That's-
blah, blah, blah.
Absolutely fine.
And that doesn't preclude you from filing additional applications in the future for
Yeah,
other work.
that I have no
Okay.
problem submitting that. Absolutely.
All right.
I mean, I'm not a lawyer, that's just out of my head from what I've seen over years of similar, so.
All right, lawyer, you were going to say something?
I was just gonna say, I think the board is just looking for confirmation, that's all. I mean,
And that's fine. We're happy to give that. I certainly understand that that's a concern of the neighbors. Mr. McComish understands that, and we're happy to provide that comfort to this board and to the neighbors. I mean, that's
Okay. That, and also we would like to have as part of the application at least a statement saying that the safety concerns and have been addressed with the building inspector.
I will, not to overthink this, but we have no problem providing something to that extent. From what I've heard from the meeting last night, those safety concerns have not been adequately addressed. So we understand that we will have to take additional steps in order to address those safety concerns.
Right.
So whatever needs to be done, we will address. I couldn't write something today that says they have, because I don't think anybody believes they have been.
Agreed, but I mean, I think that certainly I'm not asking you to write it as of today, but
Mhm.
as of when we next meet, which I would suggest is maybe next week.
Right.
If I would assume that by then you could have addressed the safety concerns with the building inspector, at least come up with a plan of how the safety concerns are going to be addressed.
Yes, that we can certainly do.
Okay.
Al, I think I would just like to say that I think that this project has obviously elicited a lot of attention from the neighbors and other people in the community. And I think that it would only be fair for the applicant and fair for the neighbors if we were to hold a public hearing for it. I think that we can determine, you know, I think the purpose of this conversation is to determine the sort of readiness and items that are needed for that. But I guess I'm saying this because we're talking about when we're going to be able to next meet. And if we are going to conduct a public hearing, we have to post it properly and, you know, identify it as a public hearing.
Okay. So I gather that is a motion that we have a public hearing for this application.
I would make a motion that we have a public hearing for this
All
application.
right. Do I have a second?
I will second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so all right, let me ask the question of the applicant. Luke, do you think that the revised drawing and the various assurances can be gathered by next week?
I think so. I'll have to confirm that with Mr. McComish, but I believe that we can get everything and the assurances together to this board next week. I'm, as far as a public hearing goes, I know it's elicited a lot of attention and concern from the neighbors, but a lot of that attention and concern is not related to this board's authority of review. It was health and safety issues, and I don't know that or I don't believe that a public hearing is warranted in this instance. The board will decide what it will decide, but that's my take on it. We can certainly have as much information to you as soon as everybody can get it to us, and a week seems like a reasonable time frame.
All right, well, the reason for the public hearing is for the board to receive input from the public. And so it's primarily for the benefit of the board members to see if there are any things which they haven't thought of. And it gives the public, and in this case, your neighbors, an opportunity to state their case. Once again, doesn't necessarily mean that we have to follow what the people say in the public hearing, because you get a lot of different points of view, typically. So I don't see any reason, and let me ask our village attorney, is there any reason why we can't have a public hearing next week?
Well, your notice requirements are, what are they, 7 days, 10 days? What's the publication and mailing requirements?
Yeah, we would have to go through the normal posting schedule, which in the case of other public hearings we've held over Zoom has been a notice of 3 weeks. If we want to make adjustments to that, we could possibly, but I think that we minimally need to make sure that we post it, do the legal notices properly as we have for other applications.
Yeah,
Right.
your code says registered mail by 10 days, publication in the paper 7 days.
I would just ask that the board consider that time frame. As you're aware, in reliance on the building permit, my client did start this. He does have the equipment at the property. He has incurred expense. He is continuing to incur expense. There's a tipping point as to when to return or not, and so I would just ask for consideration to try to meet this on the if it's 10 days notice, if we could do 2 weeks rather than 3 weeks, that would be, especially given where 3 weeks would end us in the holiday season.
All right, well, 2 weeks is when?
2 weeks is the
23rd.
23rd of December.
Okay.
3 weeks is the 30th of December.
All right, 2 weeks is the
23rd.
Okay.
But we also have a requirement for the site signage to be installed as well, and I don't know what the timing is on that. John?
It must be a policy, because I don't think it's written in the actual code.
Oh, are you looking at chapter 64?
Yeah.
Okay, then it's more recent than that, so I will need to find out that
I don't
exact.
recall what it is. We discussed it over the summer, but
Right. Well, I mean, if it's just a rule or regulation, you guys can kind of,
We can adjust the timing of it as needed.
yeah.
All right. I'm going to say that we go with the 2 weeks because I think that there is really no reason why within the 2 weeks the information can't be gathered, and the people who would be the most interested in this probably are on this Zoom meeting to begin with. So certainly I think that that'll give us enough time for the notifications for everybody involved.
Okay, I would also like to make a motion that given the uniqueness of this project, that we waive the public hearing fee, because I think we are choosing to conduct the public hearing for an atypical project, and that expense should not be the responsibility of the applicant.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you.
Okay.
Also, I just want to kind of remind everybody, you know, with respect to the public hearing, the comments should really be limited to the factors that the HDRB considers when granting, you know, their permits and certificates. So I know you guys have certain criteria. So, you know, I think everyone needs to kind of focus on those criteria, and it's not so much the stormwater and the drainage, you know, it's really the appearance and the impacts on the project. So that way it's known ahead of time, because I know there's a lot of issues. And again, many of them can be addressed with the building inspector, but you got to focus on issues that are going to, you guys are going to consider in making your determination and applying the criteria within your regulations.
Got it.
Agreed.
I completely understand that, as long as the form that's proposed functions properly. It's form follows function. That's all it is.
Are
Right.
all of the members able to attend? I mean, it would be a special session on the 23rd. It's not our regularly scheduled meeting. Would we have quorum as far as we all know? I know no one's allowed to go anywhere, so
Not going anywhere.
I'm not going
We're in
anywhere.
quarantine.
we'll find out what that contract tracer has to say to Andrea. But
I'm here.
as long as there are 3 of us, we can hold the meeting. Okay.
I
So,
can attend as long as we're not on all night. That's all.
Right.
Hopefully.
So Luke, it's still it is still important that you get I mean, we do need to make the updated application materials available to the public.
Yes.
So as quickly as those can be put together, we can have Jeff load them onto our website, and we will just note that we'll note in the posting that we will you know, when it'll be available. So if you can commit to having it by the 16th, then that's
Okay.
acceptable, because that would be the first date that the posting will appear. So we can say that it'll be available on the 16th.
That and also for us to be able to take a vote, it'll give us an opportunity to take a look at the drawing and see if it has all the information that we would be looking for.
Right. It's important that we aren't making too many annotations
markups.
during the actual review of it.
Yeah, or assumptions. Do we need to bring into record any of the additional letters that were sent? There was one that came today.
Yeah, I will just read that into the
Perfect.
record, even though Luke already referred to it, but it is just
Yeah.
a letter we received a letter today from James Hartford at River Architects to the attention of our board, as well as the building inspector and the town clerk. And it just says, "Dear HDRB board members, it has been brought to my attention that Mr. McCormish has submitted a site plan as part of his application, which is before you tonight. I'm writing to inform you that this site plan, inclusive of the driveway, is not a product of River Architects. We had conducted an earlier site study for Mr. McCormish unrelated to the current application for the driveway work. River Architects is not the design professional involved in this work and is not a party to this application. Please feel free to contact me with any questions. Sincerely, James Hartford." So let the record show. I would also just say then that, Luke, when you do prepare the drawings, if
Yeah.
you're going to be reusing that, you just remove their title block.
Yes.
All right. Any questions from Luke or Bill McComish?
Bill, anything from you?
No, I think I'm good.
I'm good as
Okay.
well. I appreciate your consideration in this matter, and we'll get you everything that you need in order to make this determination.
Okay. Well,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you both. Oh,
Thank you.
We've had a request for a public comment from Stephanie Hawkins. Would you like to say something?
I have two questions for the board. One, I'm asking if perhaps would it be helpful for the HDRB to take advice of counsel about the concerns that they've raised throughout this this meeting, because it sounds like a number of them that have been lifted up are not within the purview of the HDRB, but there are some that certainly are. And then I was
Okay, well, to answer that question, the village attorney is in fact part of this meeting.
Yes, no, I've been attending the meeting, and I wonder though if it's helpful to go into a meeting with the attorney to take advice of counsel without the public present. And that's just a question I'm asking you. You don't need to answer me about that. And then I'm wondering if you can share with the members of the public present at this meeting what the criteria within the code is that applies to the nature of this application, because the application isn't about a structure.
Right.
And so if you can help people understand.
Well, I think as was identified in the memo from the code enforcement official, part of the things that the HDRB reviews are natural features which are characteristic or are important to the historic district. And certainly in this area, we're talking about the rock outcropping being a very integral and important aspect of the buildings in this particular area. So that's why we felt that it was something that our board should review.
Oh, thanks. It's clear to me that the board feels it's important to review, and I think that I concur. But I'm interested in specifically the criteria. The attorney referred to the criteria, or by calling it the criteria in the code, and that's what I'm interested in.
Right. Yeah. So,
knowing.
Stephanie, thank you for giving me some time to find the actual section.
Sure.
It's 64-10D. If I think I'm correct in locating that.
Mhm.
So that's the criteria for the certificate of appropriateness. So those are the factors.
I don't have that in front of me. Can you identify those factors?
Well, there's a lot of them. So the review board shall be guided by the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation and any design standards, following certain principles, and it lists certain principles. Compatibility is number 2, and then it kind of gives some sub-factors to consider. So that's all kind of laid out. So it's really compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Can
And we'll
I
see.
add to that a little bit?
Yep.
Because the 6410D, it says that the board will issue a certificate of appropriateness if it determines that the proposed work will not have a substantial adverse effect on the aesthetic, historical, or architectural significance or value of the historic landmark, improvement, or natural resource, which is what we're talking about mostly, I think. Or if the proposed work is within the historic district, the work will not have a substantial adverse effect on the aesthetic, historical, or architectural significance of the property itself, neighboring properties, or the historic district overall. 6410D1A says properties which contribute to the character of the historic district shall be retained with their exterior features altered as little as possible. So there's more. I could go on a little bit more here, but if you look
Right.
at
I didn't want to go into all
10D, yeah, I know you were trying. This is my nature to be more specific. Sorry, I know you're working in the interest of time and trying to be brief, but I wanted to get it into the record too, because people are wondering.
Yep.
You did mention this,
Okay.
and those are some more specifics on it, and there's more that people can read too.
Thank you.
I would just like to say that we did receive this letter from the neighbors, and I see that some of them are on the call now. That will be included as part of the public comment for the public hearing in 2 weeks. If there are any additional written comment that people would like to see read into the record or delivered, then those can be sent to the village clerk. And the letter that was sent was signed by quite a number of people, so I will leave it to one representative of the block to make any changes reflective of this conversation that they would like to see reflected in that letter, and if any, and a new copy sent to the clerk. But unless anyone has a very specific question about process, we are not going to have any public comment.
Add a
tonight.
comment?
Not today.
Not today.
This
Go
isn't
ahead.
the first time we've talked about rock outcroppings, in this board's history, actually, even since we've updated the code. We discussed it at, what was it, number 64 Paulding, the Cupper residents. We talked about their rock outcroppings. We talk about rock outcroppings when we discuss fences. It comes up because it's such a highly visual part of our village, right? So we deal with rock outcroppings all over the place here. It's a very rocky landscape. It's one of the attractive features and unique features of this village, this region. And so we do talk about rock outcroppings. That's why it's in our code.
The street
Right, we're talking
Okay.
about Rock Street also.
Yeah, Rock Street.
We're not allowing any comment tonight, but we just
No.
had one. I'm a little unclear on that.
Yeah. Okay,
This isn't-
let us, I mean, unless there's a specific comment, as Sean said, concerning procedure, I'd
Okay,
like to,
Okay.
shut it down because we
Got it.
do have other things on the agenda.
We
tonight.
do, yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
So
seeing none.
See you. Yes. Thank you, Bill. We'll see everybody in 2 weeks.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is,
Guys,
Oh.
I'm going to sign off, okay?
okay,
Okay.
thanks, Tom.
Good night.
Thank you.
We are going into workshop.
All right. So do I have a motion to go into workshop session?
I'll move.
I'll second.
All right. We are now in workshop mode.
Okay, hold on 1 second, sorry. Okay, so 212 Main Street, and Roger is on. Anya, welcome.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Either of you have the ability to share your screen, or if you would like, I can pull up the items that you sent earlier.
I can share my screen.
Oh, great. Thanks, Roger. So this is the property, for anyone who's not familiar, it's the property on the corner of Main and Orchard. Oh, there's photos, actually. Tanya included photos, so you'll be able to see it.
See the site plan?
I see the site plan, yes.
Okay, client is Tanya Dran. She has made an application, and there are 3 parts to this application. The first being application to reconstruct an accessory building.
Sorry, Roger, I don't want to interrupt you, but we actually don't have an application to our board for this yet. This is just a workshop,
Okay,
just so you know.
yeah, I'm just reading what it actually
for the
says on the
point of-
agenda here.
Point of clarification.
Yeah, it says on the agenda here, actually, application to reconstruct.
Oh, sorry,
right.
that's my mistake.
Yeah, there's 3 parts. Let's start over. So there's 3 parts to this application. One being a second-story addition to the existing garage, which is right here. Part 2 is the deck and stairwell on this side of the building here. And the third being alterations to this front porch, which Tanya could probably speak more about. But I could certainly address these 2 items here. Okay, so here we have an existing garage. We're proposing to put another story of storage above this garage. It's not going to be a full height wall garage. It's going to be a 5-foot plate height.
Do we have photographs?
Well, I have there's a plan view. Let's start with the plan view of the garage. So here's the existing garage to the left, where the walls are not poché. To the right, we're going to propose the second-story loft, which will have a 2-foot overhang on both sides. We're going to introduce windows to the second-story loft and a new stairwell to gain access to this loft. And this is the elevations that we've come up with. This is from Orchard Street at the end of the driveway, and I've outlined where the existing garage presently is right there. This is the actual roof height. Again, looking from Orchard, this would be the side view of the garage. Again, showing the existing height of the garage and the proposed height. Carriage doors, basically the front and rear will be very similar. This is the front, it's be the same with the window, but no, of course, carriage doors. This elevation is again similar to the opposite side without the carriage doors, but we do have. So right here is the front of the garage facing Orchard. Window, window on both sides here, matching. So that is the garage. Would you want to have any questions about the garage? Want to continue with the next item?
Well, I guess how big is this in comparison to the main structure, the main house?
It is the ridge height, the new ridge height is within 6 inches of the current ridge height of Tanya's home. Just want to make a note that certainly her adjacent property neighbor is much higher than what she presently has, and also the neighbor to the back, the neighbor down this right of way in this area. Much taller ridge height, and also the neighbor to this side. So basically her home is the lowest ridge height home amongst these 3 residents. I'm not proposing to go any taller than what she has right now.
Just so I'm clear, you're saying that the primary structure, Tanya's house, is actually shorter in height than the 3 surrounding residences?
Correct.
Residential properties?
Correct. Can you confirm that, Tanya?
Okay.
Yeah, you're on mute.
Oh.
You're on mute, Tanya.
Oh, I thought I was on mute. Okay.
No, Tanya, you're on mute. There you go.
No,
Sorry.
no.
That's yes, my house is the second shortest on the street. There's only one that's got a lower ridge line than mine. The rest of the houses on the street are actually quite tall.
And so the proposed, so basically the garage is still going to be shorter than the roof line, the ridge line of your house.
Yes.
It's going to
Okay.
be very close to that, plus or minus 6 inches, I would say.
Is that consider, so when you measure, are you only considering from grade to the
Yeah.
pitch of the roof?
From grade to her ridge height.
Okay.
It was 23 feet 4 inches,
Uh-huh.
and we're proposing 22 foot 9.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I record this accurately. That's why I'm asking this.
Right,
So,
so it's within
Thank you.
scale, certainly, of her existing home.
okay.
Yeah, it's not my fault. There were a million people. No, I don't want to play because you.
Okay,
People killed instead of-
and Roger, do you have any of the photos of the
No,
house?
that I do not have to share. Can you share that, Sean?
Okay. Yeah, let's just, because I think it might be a little bit easier if we just kind of talk through the garage and then move on to the deck. So I have the photos that Tanya sent somewhere. Let's see what we got. And before we go any further, I will just reiterate for the record that this project has been referred to the zoning board. There are some, I don't even know exactly what items are under their purview with variances or lot coverage or anything like that. But so we are only reviewing this in concept. Of course, anything that we talk about here could be superseded by the zoning board's determination. Okay, so let's see here. I'm just gonna try to, I know that there's a wider shot of both of them, so I'll show those first. Or, oh, I guess maybe there isn't. All right.
All right. Now, are you on the corner of Orchard and Main?
Correct. You can certainly see the adjoining homes in the rear and to the right of that.
Okay. The reason I asked the question is that the main structure is in fact something that started out as a very small house and has been expanded upon over the years. As a matter of fact, one of the struggles that we had was trying to keep the shape of the original structure intact while adding to it.
I wasn't on the board the last time that this came before us, so for my own information, is this volume the historic volume of the house? Can everyone see what I'm circling?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to the left is
Also,
Here's
the
Right.
lower
the
part
must have been.
to the left
Right.
of that.
The part facing Main Street is in fact,
And then this,
Also,
that,
Yeah.
okay, so then
Yeah.
this unit and this second floor was an addition, a later addition.
right.
no,
No.
Yes.
no, that was all.
It was
The lower part was there, and then this
Yep.
part all the way to the left was an enclosed porch. So there were two step down levels attached to the original house shape.
Uh-huh.
But the middle section is the kitchen. So
Right.
I imagine that was part of the house for quite some time. Maybe not in the 1800s, but it's been there for a long time.
So the work
The-
that you did, Tanya, then was just the second floor.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Did you
So-
enclose the porch originally too?
No, it was
Or
already
you,
enclosed when I
you
got
want-
it.
Okay.
And when did you put this on the top?
2014.
Okay, cool. That was,
We have a lot of porch enclosures. I had one on my house. Again, expanding the kitchen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we need to pull out the files on 2014 because
That would be helpful, I think.
Yeah.
it's okay. Let's continue on with what you're proposing, and so that at least we can talk about it.
Put your drawings back up again, Roger, if you want.
Yep. So we'll move on to the next item. Let me start here. So again, we'll go to the balcony and deck part right there, which is here. So here's the side elevation. We're proposing this deck area here.
We're not seeing
Not seeing anything.
the drawing.
You can't see it?
No.
No.
Oh. Okay. Mhm.
Okay.
Go.
Again, the side elevation with the deck in this location here with the stair coming down in this direction will be a winder type stair, as you can see from the plan down below here.
Mhm.
And I just kind of showed a corner of the garage in relation to the stair.
That's the upper floor or the lower floor showing on the plan?
Well, I'm just showing the upper floor windows here. So this is the
Oh,
upper
yeah.
floor.
Okay. So it's the upper floor of the garage also?
Yeah, so we're cutting it right across through here, that plan.
Okay.
We do have an existing window here that will be in the way of the new winding stair, but we are proposing to put one window in this area to continue with some light into that back space.
Oh, okay. I thought that was a screen door on the or a storm door on the photograph, but that's a window.
Yeah, there's a window kind of below there if you want to go back to that picture.
Yeah, I can see it here. Let me share that with everybody. You know what? I have your drawings too, Roger. So we can flip between
Okay.
them. That's easier then.
And you do see on that upper floor the patio door that when the application, I believe, was submitted for a permit, they had proposed to put a deck on this house. Is that correct, Tony? So,
To a standstill, trying to figure out where to put the stairs. And since we've been talking about the addition for so long, I think that Al may have suggested that we wrap up the house part so that we could get on with the construction and then, you know, revisit the deck later. I don't think I intended to wait for 5 or 6 years, but yeah, that was, we decided that it was holding up the work. So now I'm revisiting it.
So what's the depth of the deck? I can't.
look at the
7
plan
foot.
below, the elevation there at 7 feet.
Okay.
Uh,
So it's going to come off 7 feet, and it's going to be about 20-ish feet wide altogether with the stairs. I'm sorry, I have really bad eyesight. Is that a 14 and a
Yeah, make it
6?
out
14
later.
and a half, yeah.
Okay. I don't want to zoom in because then it's going to zoom in for everybody. So
That's okay. I really can't see it either.
Yeah, neither.
Because I need my eyes checked and I
That's
can't
what
get
I
to the
need to do.
doctor. So.
You need me to drop some readers over?
yeah. So the actual so the balcony itself looks like it's going to be about 14 by 7, and then the stairs are kind of adding another 6, but
Yeah,
they aren't the full depth. Okay.
right. And then it's 3 foot off the corner of the house. And
And
Okay.
yeah, so I think the only question that I had as far as the siting of everything is concerned, I'm going to go to the site plan. Are the way that you have this drawn, where you have the existing garage, those are the dimensions without the without the extra 2 feet on either side?
Correct.
Okay. I think my big concern would just be, you know, how close is the corner of the garage gonna end up looking against the corner of the house? I would be, I mean, I know that there's I'm not concerned about safety or you know, fire clearance or anything like that, but just optically, as you're making your way down the street, is it gonna kind of create too solid of a wall on that east, or I guess north-ish facade? You know, this line here going to look almost like a solid building, depending on the angle that you're hitting it at. I don't know if anyone else shares that concern, but that was just the kind of the thing, just as far as the bulking is concerned. And as far as the deck is concerned, I don't really have any.
What is the right of way? Because obviously, following on what Sean said, that 2-foot overhang is going to project into the right of way.
Access to the yellow house
That's
to the west.
Oh, is that the primary access to that house?
Yes, it is, I believe.
Well, I don't think so, because I think there's an access from Main Street.
There is a stair from Main Street.
But that's the primary.
But that's the driveway.
Vehicular access, yes.
So if anything tall had to make its way down that driveway, then would there be I can't speak to the you know, required heights or things like that for driveway obstructions. I don't know whether is that something that the ZBA wants to review with you?
Well, it's not really a ZBA issue. If there is a right of way, I would assume that there's a legal document establishing the right of way. And so the question would be, does that allow a projection, you know, the 2-foot projection at a certain height? I mean, that's not really our issue to examine. That becomes something which you really need to you know, have a lawyer take a look at. What is the right of way? What are the requirements of the right of way?
Right. I do think that the way that it does affect our, you know, the things that we look at, though, is it does, you know, in a strange way, create a little bit of an asymmetry. But, well, let me ask this: what was the sort of genesis of the garage expansion? What kind of, walk me through this?
So storage. My house has hardly any closets. My basement is full. My garage is about to explode with things. Not that I want to keep all of the things, but even if I get rid of the excess, I just have very little storage. And you know, I just thought it would be nice to be able to store off-season bins and decorations and, you know, the kind of things that you put in a closet, because my bedroom closet is full of bins of seasonal decorations. And so therefore my clothes are hanging in a sort of sitting area. I mean, there's a closet in the sitting area outside of my room. My son's room is also very narrow. He has games stacked up, but there's not enough room for a clothing rack there. So that's why we have one closet, which could be just a linen closet, and that's where we have to use, you know, a clothing rack.
Old houses don't have closets, Tanya. We get it.
So those overhangs on either side, I mean, it's really just to maximize the floor space.
Right,
exactly. Going straight up, you know, following the lines of the existing the existing garage.
Right.
Is there a as far as the clearances and things on the second floor, Roger, is there a structural demand for that to be wider? I'm just wondering about, like, to get, because obviously the staircase is going to be new. So to get that staircase into the space, do you need to have as deep an overhang on either side?
I think it was just, again, Tanya really had a requirement for more storage. I mean, it
Right.
didn't really-
Okay. So it's just maximizing the space.
Yeah, that's really what it was up about.
All right. How about the third part? What's
Tanya, you could speak on that. I would be a porch.
Oh, that's just a revision of my front porch steps because they are too steep and too, the treads are too short or too shallow. They're not deep enough. So I discourage people from using the front steps or the front door because it just seems so perilous to walk up those steps and go down. So meanwhile, everybody has to go around to that ugly driveway and go in the back end of the house. But I'd like to be able to use my front door and, have safe steps in case Girl Scouts come by to sell cookies. I don't want them slipping down and injuring themselves or trick-or-treaters.
So in other words, what you're doing is you're rebuilding the steps which are on the Orchard Street side.
Yes. I just
Okay.
wanted them to come out at a more gradual grade so that they're wider and safer and
Well, I mean, if you make any change, then what you're going to have to do is comply with the current code, which is 711.
right.
Do you have any drawings or photos of that to share?
Oh, well, I was just drawing it tonight and I'm gonna have to figure out how to exit out of my, well, I guess I could try to just hold it up.
Well,
But
actually, if you I mean, I've got the Google Street View, and you can sort of see where the stairs are. If that.
Oh, I have photos of the existing stairs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you share a digital photo of the,
Yeah, let me just see. Here we go.
it's the little arrow on the bottom. Oh, you know what? I have to stop before you can. Sorry.
Okay, right.
And now you can.
Now let's see. Okay, luckily that was the last thing I was looking at. So, all right, so it's really hard to tell from that angle, but these are, very narrow. Let me just go to the next and see.
I think you're gonna have to say what frame it's. You're gonna have to, when you hit this screen share, it's gonna ask you to select whatever program it is you're using to look at the photos.
Oh, okay. Let's see.
And it'll put a little neon box around it.
Let me just make sure that there are two sets, but I think that's the one. Did that work?
Yep.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. So the first one was just a little further back, but now. Okay, so you can kind of get an idea. I got these the other night just out of, I should have planned ahead.
Nice lights.
But I want to cover up I hate the concrete, obviously. So instead of repaving it, I was hoping that the bottom stair could be decking, a wide deck landing. It's not going to be that wide by the time you extend the stairs out, but let's see, I took some measurements. So, all right, so right now, it's 60 inches high to the top, to the deck, I'm sorry, the porch, and 57.5 inches out from the top step to the crack in the sidewalk. And so
The one thing I just counted, you got 7 treads that are involved, not counting the top and the bottom landing. So if you've got 7 treads, then you're talking about the entire stair assembly coming out 77 inches.
Could you just flip to the side view, Tanya? Because I think
Sure.
that's where that measurement's going to come in. So what Al is saying is that you're going to need to make sure that you have where that planter is in that tree. You're going to have 77 inches for the stairs to come out, plus the
Width
landing.
of the stairs.
Right. So if I had 8 steps, and I thought it was 12 by 7.5, the code, but anyway,
No, it's
it would be,
711.
so at my calculation, it would be 96 inches, and that would be 38.5 inches beyond the current fit of the stairs. And it would be 4.5 inches shy of the wall. So I was hoping that level, when the stairs hit the wall, would be sort of, I would get rid of the tree, which I'm not crazy about anyway, and just have a landing there with maybe even a little tiny railing coming out from the wall opposite the stairs, so that it's just a, you know, maybe a square step up off the sidewalk before you turn and go up the stairs to my house.
Sorry, when you're saying the wall, are you referring to that cement wall around the
Yes,
planter?
the planter, if you want to call it that.
Okay, so
I don't want to necessarily see that anymore. So if I had the stairs going out to that, then you would only see stone on the front, but then there would be decking over the planter part. And part of that probably would be involved in the stairs anyway. So I think the stairs would come up almost to the wall of the planter. So basically the dirt part would be a little landing, and then I would like to have 2 steps coming down, like out to the sidewalk, I mean.
So in other words, you want an intermediate landing at some point, and then steps coming out towards the sidewalk.
Right. I mean, the way I envision it would be that the porch steps would pretty much meet the stone wall, and then you would turn and like there would be enough step down for 2 more steps.
Well, yes. I mean, the 711 is what is currently called for in the building code. But the thing is that you can have that intermediate landing at any particular point, and basically just make I guess it's a right turn coming down, and have a couple of risers. You're going to need at least 2 risers from the intermediate landing towards the sidewalk. So that'll be another 22 inches.
is there a reason, Tanya, why you will not just, I mean, if you're going to remove the tree and if you don't like the planter, is there a reason why you don't just remove the planter? Is that wall, does that cement wall provide some sort of a structure to something else?
Well, if I am able to make my stairs the way I'd like, it doesn't really matter if the planter's there or not. I still like the idea of having a slightly elevated first landing, or intermediate landing, because otherwise, you know, you're looking at a really ugly corner of, you know, the junction of the 2 parts of the house. Yeah, it's like the first part of the house, and then the second part is kind of bumped out. I just thought it would be nice to have a little elevation from the sidewalk, since it's a fairly busy sidewalk. I don't know.
Right. Well, the reason why I was suggesting that is just that you're, if you visualize, you know, if you're looking at this photo right now, and actually the change between the wall color and the foundation color is very helpful in demonstrating this, but you can see how the sidewalk in front of your house is slanted, significantly. Where so if you were to clear that entire area where the tree is and the retaining wall and all of that stuff, you would still be able to have an extended landing coming off the front like you're suggesting, but you would just enter it still in line with the staircase. I'm only addressing this because I think then otherwise you're going to be dealing with the potential where you're stepping off the lowest riser onto a sidewalk that's not level. Whereas if you kind of are coming off of the sidewalk and you walk onto that where that tree is at grade, you would then turn and just walk up the steps. I mean, you could still have an extended sort of platform, but you're just going to remove that kind of necessary geometry of having one side of your step be taller than the other side of your step. Does that make sense?
Well, actually, what I would suggest is that you use the distance from the stair to the sidewalk to create a sort of warped surface. And if it's concrete again, then you can do that in concrete to make up for what Sean is talking about. In other words, having stairs coming to a slanted sidewalk is very difficult because you wind up having stairs which are very low at one end and very high at the other end. That winds up being somewhat of a tripping hazard for people who don't really pay attention to the steps.
Right.
But what you can do is you can have a level landing at the bottom of the stair, and then the distance from that landing to the sidewalk, you can put in a concrete slab which is warped to accommodate the difference in the elevation. It's something that I think, it's a good point and Sean's bringing up. I think that you just need to take a look at that.
I had to do something very similar to my own house. So this is something that I've had to contemplate recently where, I actually had to extend my first step out far. Exactly, basically what you're describing. I didn't change direction. It just all came out in one direction, but my bottom step, I had to exaggerate the depth of it because otherwise there would be this weird sort of situation where if you stepped off one side, it would be, a more significant drop, and on the other side it was shorter. But by pulling it out, I was able to kind of get rid of that. You're looking at something that, as you're proposing, has a change in direction too. So that's something else to contend with. But I am willing to offer some guidance on this, which would be that, I think it's obviously very important that your steps be safe and that people are able to get onto them easily, especially since this is the main facade of the house, and naturally that's where, the mailman and everybody else would be inclined to use them. I think that because your steps come off of the porch and they aren't covered by the roof, adjusting the slope of them to accommodate that is not going to have a huge impact on the overall character of the porch. I would just want to see that, I'd want to see all the materials proposed to match what's currently there, and the use of, similar styled balustrades and railings and the lattice and everything to match the rest of the porch so it seems integrated. But I think obviously we'd have to look at a drawing and everything else, but I think in concept, it's an appropriate shift to make the porch steps safer. And as far as the planter and tree and retaining wall and all that's concerned, I don't I would have to get more information about it, but it doesn't strike me as anything that has significant, historic significance to the property. So removing it or cutting into it is as needed shouldn't be a problem. Were you proposing keeping? You're going to make these changes to the steps, and then, but are all the other materials on the porch going to remain the same, and the deck?
Yes. Yeah,
So
I was going to match it to the existing
Right.
railings and banisters.
And decking.
And
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, nothing.
Oh, I was thinking if I did turn, that I would have just, I think you have to have railings going down, right? For the two
No.
steps. You don't have to?
No, you do.
Oh, that's what I thought.
Yeah,
Three risers.
essentially what you need is a handrail. You don't
Right.
need a guardrail, but you need a handrail. But typically in these types of installations, the guardrail is the handrail. So, but yes, you do need a handrail.
The difference between a
So, I think that
guardrail
would
and a
help.
handrail is one prevents you from falling off the step sideways.
Yeah, a handrail is what you hold on to as you're going down the stairs, and that's typically 36 inches above the tread. Guardrail is something which is to keep you from falling over. The code doesn't require guardrails unless you're the difference in elevation is something like 18 or 24 inches. I forget exactly what the number is. But I think typically for two risers, which would be 14 inches, I think that it's under that. But, like I said, if you look at what you have there now, it is in fact a handrail. That is probably 36 inches above the tread. And that's because that's a pre-existing non-conforming condition. So, yes, short answer is yes, you're going to need a handrail. The chances are it's going to look like that handrail there.
Right. No, I wasn't actually referring to the handrail for the stairway, but actually the two steps that, in my hope to make them come toward the sidewalk.
Right.
Would the handrail make it safer to step off? I mean, if you have a handrail on each side, I don't know. I mean,
well, you've got a point there. If that's a 36-inch wide stair, then the chances are you're only going to need a handrail on one side, not on both. So you could extend it on the, as you're facing it on the left side, and then you don't have anything that you have to provide on the other side. Or you could provide it just on the other side and, leave that side alone.
right.
So,
If I could just turn the share off for a second, I could get the drawing out of my email because I just snapped a picture of it.
okay.
Just 1 second. Okay. All right. Where is it? Oh, here we go. So this is probably not completely correct, but that was sort of the idea. The first 1, 2, 3, 4 steps would be, I thought, a foot. And then the 4th and 5th would be 18 inches. I mean, this is based on, I thought that the treads had to be 12 inches. I kind of like 12 inches because then it feels good and firm. Like after the 7-inch treads that I have now, it seems like that would be a good secure measurement, a 12-inch tread. Then, I mean, they don't have to be 18, but I was just trying to come out about where the wall is. And since it does come just about 4.5 inches out from the wall, according to my measurements, this is sort of correct. And then I see, I mean, I drew this little 2 spindle railing on the other side so that when you turn, I mean, I guess that's where you could put banister and have the railing on that side. And then the wall would continue, like you've got the wall underneath the stairs and then the wall continues all the way up to my driveway.
All right, and so what's dashed line is the planter, the portion of the planter that's being removed?
Right, exactly. And that would be a level deck or landing.
Intermediate landing. I think that that could work. I think that you need to lay it out a little bit more accurately, because you certainly, from the photograph, it looks like you have plenty of room, and especially if you're getting rid of that tree. As a matter of fact, I think that you're going to have a portion of that planter, which you either get rid of it, or have it come around. I guess let's go back to that photograph for a sec.
Can I just say while you're on this that we don't really comment about this, but I just want to say that I think by code you're required to have each tread be similar dimensions. So I don't think you can go from 12 to 18. Just think about walking up a set of stairs if you have different sizes and you're just kind of doing it blindly, if you will. Just, after a while, it just becomes habit walking up a stair. If they're different dimensions, you can trip more easily. So the code's intent, I believe, is that everything be equal.
Yeah, there's I think something like an 1/8 of an inch maximum variation that the code allows.
And there's some sort of variation too in that last step onto the sidewalk, which Sean was mentioning, as to how, it's narrower on the right side than it is on the left in your drawing, and, given the slope of the sidewalk. So there's some maximum variation that's allowed there. So that's why Sean was suggesting maybe turning it or somehow orienting the steps in a different way so that they didn't approach the sidewalk perpendicular, because you'd better be able to deal with that slope if you weren't coming at it perpendicularly.
And I think that that's something, if you look on, and of course I can't think of any exact examples off the top of my head, but because we do have so many hills, like going down Main Street and things like that, you will see that a lot of stairs are entered parallel to the street rather than perpendicular to the street. It was something that we looked at 126 Main Street when they rebuilt that. If you've noticed where the yarn store is, their front steps actually are to the side of the street for that same reason. And I know there's a couple of buildings on Stone Street that do that. So it's not it's not an atypical way of dealing with stepping onto a sloped grade. But your solution, you would just need to come up. You would just need to. The other thing that we're not looking at here is the depth of it all off of the side of the building. So to Al's point, you may, if you have enough depth between the sidewalk and your bottom step, it's something that you could work out in cement to kind of accommodate it so that it was a little bit, so you're distributing change in elevation more,
Mhm.
more evenly. But
Yeah.
that's a drawing 2.0 thing to figure out. It's not something that we can really do in 2D. I think
Okay.
unless anybody else has any concerns specifically about the steps in context, if we can just swing back to the other two items that Roger was presenting. Because Tanya, am I right that the porch stairs are not part of your ZBA approval, or is that something else that they're looking at too?
I don't think that she felt like it needed to go to ZBA. I think that because it's just a revision, I think she said that should be straightforward. It was just a matter of needing your approval.
Okay, I just didn't know if where they were, if it was something that was outside of your property line or anything like that.
What is it that you are going to the ZBA for?
I think it's just for the setbacks of the garage because it's already too close. So I guess to
non-conforming.
It's all spelled out in the referral. And I do not think it mentions the stoop.
How about the deck
off
on the side?
The stoop does appear to be going off the property, so maybe I'm not sure how that works. Oh yeah, it does mention alterations to existing porch. Sorry. Application to reconstruct accessory building, construct deck at rear of house, and alterations to existing porch. Variations required for lot coverage, accessory building in excess of 1.5 stories, accessory building less than 10 foot from lot line, and accessory structure occupying in excess of 30% rear yard coverage.
Yeah, so those are the variances needed from ZBA. So none of the ZBA variances have anything to do with the porch steps or the deck and staircase. So those two things are just subject to HDRB approval. The variances that you do need are all pertaining to the
garage
coverage
building, right? Is that how you understand it as well, Roger? Because I know you.
That's exactly right. It really, the balcony, the stairwell in the back is certainly meets zoning. It's really just the garage itself.
It's the garage. Okay. And have you been put on their calendar yet?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, then if we can just spin back to the garage then, since that is the thing that they need to look at. Again, I think from speaking from as one of us, the topology of a sort of top heavy garage like this, it isn't something that I recall seeing elsewhere in the village, in the district, or even kind of in the area. I mean, it's a design that's used in lots of places. I mean, it's used in Japan and it's used in Switzerland. I can't think of another example in the district that uses this sort of design. So.
Just let me, I'm sorry to interrupt. Let me jump in very quickly. I think it's more a Victorian look, whereas the house as it was originally constructed is really a federal, almost colonial. No, not even, I'm sorry. It's a, if I remember correctly, it's a federal. It was a lot more simple in shape and detail. So that's all. I just wanted to jump in. I think that the garage certainly looks like a Victorian e- e- especially with the window and all of the trim work. And which is a design style which greatly or is well after when the house was built.
Would you feel more comfortable if that upper gable end trim work were to be removed and just
But yeah, well, the overhang, I mean, you know, you see a number of Victorian structures which have a lot of, you know, turrets and other upper floors overhanging lower floors and stuff like that. But you don't see it in the Georgian Federalist type of structures, which are more straightforward in shape and configuration.
Is the goal, Roger, is the goal to keep the existing garage and build this on top of it, or will it be an entirely new structure?
No, our goal is to keep the lower half of the garage, the existing walls. Obviously, we're going to remove the roof, you know, replaced within the walls. But yeah, that is our goal, is to keep the walls, remove the roof, and put some new floor joist in and frame up from that.
What do you know about the condition of the garage as it stands, or can you speak to its history at all? Do we know that it's contemporary, or do we know that it's older?
I mean, the 2x4s are 24 inches on center within the walls. I certainly would like to propose, you know, additional framing in there. But that's what's there. And for the most part, the studs seem to be okay. Like I said, there are a couple that may have some to be replaced.
But in your estimation, it's a 20th century structure or older?
Probably whenever the house was built. I mean, it's early 1900s.
Okay.
Yes, I believe it has actual 2x4 dimensional lumber in the walls.
Okay. Those steel doors always throw me off. You know, you never know when those when they added
Right.
them.
That was
Well-
a little bit later.
I guess
mean, we have examples of primary structures in the village with overhangs, but sometimes what I've learned being on this board for almost 5 years now is that the overhang is usually a result of infill, filling in a porch. We see that all the time to expand space. So we don't usually see that style in the village when it pertains to secondary structures. So that I think it's kind of what we're talking about here.
Well, that, and also from that photograph, it looks like it's novelty siding, which would place it in the late 1800s, early 1900s, which I think is the period of the house. Which the fact that it's a separate garage is also something which is, you know, indicates it's an older building, because typically the stables would be separate structures.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the
Yep.
only building I can think of in the district, and I don't necessarily have all of them committed to memory, but the only one that I can think of that has overhangs, and they're very small, would be that one on Church or Garden Street. I can't remember which.
You're talking about the Three Sisters that are next, the three Victorians.
The 3 gingerbread houses.
Yeah.
Mm,
And I can tell you right now, because I was on the board when they added, that's a result of added floor area.
Are you talking about Chris and Jen's house?
No.
I'm talking about Rebecca and what's his name?
Oh, that is on Church Street, the Octagon house
Yeah.
with the green trim, or you said the
Yeah.
green trim?
The Haskell residence currently. Yeah. Mhm.
That has extended overhangs on the second floor.
I don't know. I'm looking at it now. Actually, it doesn't.
I
Sorry.
used to live across the street from it. I didn't remember that,
No,
but it is. I
you're
mean,
right.
I think to Al's
Never
point,
mind.
it's
Never
not
mind.
something that's not used. I mean, it is. It was used in Tudor architecture and Tudor revival, and having those overhangs is not unheard of, but it just isn't a very common topology here
Right.
in our district, and I don't know how it relates to the historic structure of the house or even the modern addition to the house. I think you're going to end up with sort of multiple iterations in the history of this campus, so to speak, and the newest of them is going to have this more kind of historic reference that isn't related to anything else. I don't know whether
well, the rest of the streetscape doesn't show a lot of examples of overhang. And so if you consider the entire street, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. I really like this garage. It's sweet in its simplicity. And we also see a ton of garages that have been altered. This garage, yes, I mean, very well could be 100 years old. And, it's been modified over the years. It's got a, maybe roll down 1950s, garage door to accommodate a car. Maybe it used to accommodate some other vehicle. I lived in a really wacky house on Garden Street that had a similar shed that had, we could never figure out what the house was, what this shed was intended for. As it turned out, I learned from Mackie Budney, who had grown up in the house he had still occupied, and he had watched his brother hang out with the ne'er-do-well who used to live in the house that I had occupied. And I learned that—
I remind you that this is being recorded, Andrea. So.
Oh, I know. No. This was a long time ago. No one knows who this guy. Anyway, it was some guy who just wanted enough room. We could never figure out the sizing of, like, why was this shed the size it was? And it turned out that the guy was just wanted to occupy the space with a motorcycle or two. And so that's why the driveway was too narrow for a car, and the shed was just kind of like too small for a car, not really big enough for anything else. It was really strange. So, it's kind of amazing what you learn from your neighbors. But yeah, I had a similar, modified garage situation. So someone else had torn out the original doorway, tried to make it a garage, didn't work. So anyway, that's the story of a garage that I dealt with at one point in my life here in the village. And you may just, I don't know, end up modifying this garage without the roll down door or something.
That was something that I was going to ask is, is the eventual goal to have car space in addition to storage?
Yeah.
No. So the entire structure is just going to be for storage. You're not going to have you're not going to be trying to get a car in there.
It's really small. I mean, I think the scale looks larger on paper, but the building is, it's a small garage. It would take up the whole garage to park my car in there, and I need the space for, for woodwork or for storing painting equipment and garden tools.
Right.
When I was getting a long way around saying that some of these garages don't even accommodate cars, and so they end up becoming these kind of problematic auxiliary buildings.
All right, I think that we need to sort of wind down this workshop because it's 9:30 and we still have a number of items that we have to cover. So I'd like to, I'll tell you the one thing that this reminds me of is the Riverview building, James Hartford.
Hmm?
It's got the same sort of novelty siding. And I think that building dates back to the 1800s, mid 1800s, if I remember correctly. So
And in that building, they maintained a lot of the structure of the original volume and actually raised it over a semi below grade. Their uses clearly are very different than what you need, but they were able to keep the shape of the original building and modify it in that way by raising it up.
Right. And again, the one thing, if you have this right of way, what are the restrictions on the right of way? I think that you need to take a look at the document because, you know, it's a very good question. I mean, do they, is it something which you have to get the permission of the owners of the adjacent property in order to construct?
Could I just speak one more time regarding the overhang? If you look at this photo right here, you see how the existing home or the new addition home does have an overhang.
I was about to say that. I see the overhang now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's about a 12-inch overhang right there.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that column is structural or not, but it's there, and the existing home does have an overhang. So that was kind of our reasoning why the overhang's a little bit larger than what's shown on the original house, but you know, we're trying to keep it in tune with what's already on the site. You know, maybe
I think maybe what makes the overhang a little overly emphasized, maybe my thought, just looking at these plans for the first time, there's a bracket that's curved. I'm pointing at my screen. There's a curved bracket that doesn't you know, speak to the primary structure. If this, you know, kind of overhang over the garage, over the original structure of the garage, was only a foot out, and like the rest of the primary structure, and if you could get away with that, I can't speak for the zoning board, but that's not under my purview. But if it was in keeping with the primary structure, it would make more sense to me. You know, if there wasn't a decorative bracket, it just doesn't seem necessary because nowhere else on Tanya's house does that exist that I can see from the evidence you've, you know, delivered tonight. So, you know, even if you brought it in a foot and didn't have that decorative bracket, that would be more in keeping with the primary structure on the property, in my view.
We'll take a look at that.
Yeah.
Also, the ornamentation in the gable, the
Yeah.
batten.
Yeah, the batten doesn't.
I don't know where they're coming from. They seem out of left field to me, along with the 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 divided lights times 2.
Well, that is not, I mean, coming out of nowhere, because there is a home across from the church, the Methodist church, that is up on the hill there, that has that pretty much that exact same trim on the house that's there.
It doesn't fit the property to me. I mean, I guess I'm curious as to what zoning will say, because it seems everything now is seeming with this addition seems very, very bulky. Already, I think the whole corner is very bulky, and I find the cute little garage, as Andrea said, a relief. I mean, I could see adding to it, but I guess I'm finding it out of character and fussy. Maybe it's the trim. Sure, it may exist down the street, but I don't think it matches the character of the original building.
I think
the house.
I think one of the things which would help us a lot would be if we could see this
everything together,
right, in comparison. You know, in other words, next to the main house, so you can see how they relate to each other.
Okay.
And even the outline of the neighbor too, and the house in the back, maybe grayed out, just so you can see the relation.
And I guess in that, to that point, you know, to Andrea's point, if the overall, if the overhangs on either side are pulled in a bit, are you going to then be, just how is that going to affect the overall height of the center ridge and everything else? You know, is the 10-foot 5 interior height at the ridge, is that just dictated by the proportions of the width of that floor plate? Is there something specific that's going to be stored in here where you need to have such a high ridge line? Or what, you know, is that just trying to keep everything in scale to itself?
Well, that and also, I don't think that the slope of the roofs on the main house are 12 on 12. So I think it's something that, you know, I don't see any particular justification for going with that much of a pitch.
Right. And I think that if the pitch were to be closer to the pitch of the existing garage and the overall floor plate on the second floor was reduced by 18 inches or 2 feet, for the sake of argument, then, you know, the overall height is going to come down more, and it would appear a little more subservient to the primary structure.
And if it's just serving the purpose of storage, you don't really need that kind of pitch.
Well, it depends what you're storing, but I mean, if there's a
You're
reason
right.
for it to be so high, then
Yeah.
we can discuss it. But I'm thinking just as far as, because it's not like the space is going to be like, you're not going to have enough headroom. Obviously, you will. So those are just kind of the general things that are jumping out to me. I mean, I think we'd want to get a little bit more information about the history of the garage itself and what can be saved, what's going to be reused, what needs to be replaced, and how that's going to relate to, you know, the addition on the top. Those are just the things that we always want to know. Is there anything else in terms of guidance that we can give you right now?
I just add
certainly a fair review, and we'll take a look at it and consider some of your thoughts on this.
Okay, what were you going to say, Lloyd?
I was just going to say there are other ways to achieve that floor area, maybe a little bit less than what you're getting on the second floor, but there are other ways than bumping out the entire length, 2 feet each side. There could be some sort of bay window approach could work, even a pretty wide one, so that the street frontage, the street facing elevation isn't so wide and also top heavy. And, you know, and being, I think, and it would be maybe be more respectful to some of the precedent of this type of house.
That's true. Even if it were something that you were to do on the rear facade of the garage, it would be much less visible from
That's another thought.
Orchard Street.
Right. So I guess the issue that I'd like to wrap this up. It's
Right.
9:38, and we do have other things to cover. So with that, since this is a workshop and we're just dealing with conceptuals, you know, I'll do a disclaimer to make the mayor happy, that this is not approval. We're just discussing ideas in this workshop, and certainly that does not constitute us advocating yes or no at this particular point. Okay.
I would just say also, from a process standpoint, because there seems to be less ambiguity about the deck and rear steps, you are welcome to, and it also sounds like that's not something that's going to be reviewed by the ZBA. If you wanted to split this and submit it as a separate application to get your approvals for that, possibly even with your front porch too, if that design is realized, we could, that's a totally normal thing that people do. So if you want to be able to have that ready, I don't know what your timeline is to get going on these things, but if you did want to be able to have that to start working on either of those two things, we can review them as separate applications and approve them independent from the garage project, especially since the garage is what's triggering the ZBA compliance. So
We'll certainly consider your recommendation.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll
Well,
close.
Just one
this
more thing, is this, do we move on to another workshop? What will be the next step?
well, we have another meeting next week, which is our standing December workshop. So you're welcome to come back.
No, today is the standing December workshop. No,
Today
2
is
weeks.
standing
2
December.
weeks is the standing workshop. And we have, we're going to have a public hearing, but we will have a meeting in 2 weeks. So certainly if you want to come back for another workshop, we certainly, or if you want to split up the application and you would like for us to look at the deck and the front steps, we could do that also.
Okay.
We
Thank
did,
you.
Al, we did determine at the beginning of the month that our 2 meetings would be on today and our second meeting would be next week to avoid the Christmas holiday. So I realized that we just scheduled an additional special session for the public hearing, but would you like to cancel our meeting for next week and do it
Yeah.
all on the 23rd?
Yes, 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 we
I will
would.
make sure that the clerk is aware of that.
Okay.
Okay.
Good idea.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Before we go,
Sure.
first of all, you're saying that this looks kind of Victorian, but my front porch is Victorian. And underneath the porch, I found the original gables, which are curved. It's a rotten 1800s gable. My house is built in the 1800s. The earliest that I have record of is 1893, but Kathleen, when I was having the addition put on, believed that that was when they put the front porch on, the Victorian style front porch on my federal, colonial, whatever style you want to call it.
Right.
She thinks that it was actually built more like mid 1800s. And that was one point, that it does have Victorian details on a different style. That was someone's choice 100 years ago. The other thing I wanted to say is there's quite a variety of garages in my neighborhood, and they're some have high ridge lines, and all of the houses have high ridge lines. So, I'm trying to kind of fit into the neighborhood. And to begin with, I hoped that my own roof line would be more in keeping with the entire block, instead of having a shallow pitch, which looks to me a little bit unusual on the street. So I'd hate to make the same mistake with the garage and have 2 mistakes. I mean, I'm really kind of like becoming disillusioned with where I live, because it's not. When I saw the way my house turned out, I'm going, why would anyone on any board want a ranch style on top of a colonial instead of something that fits more in the neighborhood? But I'm dealing with it. That's what I'm living in. It's not what I envisioned, but it was the compromise. And now I think it's a very beautiful design that Roger came up with. He, incorporated the elements that I like. I don't think it has to go out 2 feet. I think that's more than it needs to go out. But I thought the brackets would be in keeping with the original brackets from my front porch. I think that the Tudor style trim, although, there's not a lot of it, it's really beautiful and it fits in really well on the cottage on the hill. And, if it's the same tone, you're not doing like contrasting trim, but if it's in this, like the same color family, then it's not too conspicuous. It's just a tasteful you know, additional element. But I mean, I have plenty of pictures of the garages that I took this afternoon, if you'd like to see any of them. Or you can maybe tour the neighborhood and see the garages. I mean, there's one that's very elaborate and it's tall.
Yeah,
mean-
Tanya, I think that you're distorting what our discussions were when we reviewed the addition that you were proposing, and that was built. I don't think if we had anything to say, you wouldn't have the addition, but we worked with you to produce an addition that was acceptable to us and also acceptable to you. Now, we can continue this discussion, but I think that what you were referring to is that there is a certain basic style, and if I remember, I think federal was in fact what was said, which is typical of a lot of houses in Cold Spring, and that it is strictly the brackets and some of the frou-frou on the front porch, which is Victorian, which was in fact a later addition. And if I remember correctly, that was because, since you were not really changing the front porch, we just left it alone. So that, the fact that it was added is not something that we advocated. And so I think that we need to work together. If you want something else done here, this is going to be more of a discussion than what you're saying. And we'll go back over the documents and we'll review all of the materials that we researched when we looked at it originally. It's not as simple as you state, and certainly a curved bracket on a porch is a lot different than a major bracket, which theoretically is holding up an overhang. I think that, do you want to say anything else? I mean, I'm trying to wrap this up, and I think that I felt you were being unfair to the process that we went through in 2014.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you, but it was just disappointing to see my house built. It just wasn't what I envisioned.
I know, and there's a reason for that. All right.
Could be useful next time to see your photos, and I will certainly take a better look at the neighborhood on a brisk winter walk around. It's a beautiful area to get around, so I'll try to do that soon too before we meet again.
Thank you.
So it sounds like, according to the chair, that our December workshop will be on the 23rd, and then our January meeting is on the 13th. So you can just relay to me or the clerk, or well, both of us, if you want to be put on either of those agendas, and if you want to split the porch work and the balcony into 3 applications or 2 applications, or however you want to do it for expediency, we can do that. I mean, if you weren't planning on doing it until the spring anyway, then that's, you can look at them all together. But because just if the garage is a longer conversation and the ZBA process extends, then you'll be able to move forward with those other things.
Right, I like that idea. I would like to try to move forward with the deck.
Okay. Yeah, so you're just going to want to make sure that you have, I mean, you have the drawing that Roger supplied. We just want to know about all of the materials, and then, as long as all of the proportions and everything are called out, and the, the size of the railings, the size of the balusters, and all of those things. So that's just what we need to discuss. And then also too, if you are going to be putting any lighting out there as part of the project, to just have the cut sheets for those fixtures so we can look at them. I don't know if you are, but.
There are already fixtures installed.
Oh, okay. On the.
They did that originally.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay. So yeah, so then if you just want to put together a second, or I guess one application for that, because we don't have your COA application for the whole thing, then you can just communicate that to Jeff that you're submitting it just for the purpose of the back deck. And then he'll, I don't know exactly how it's going to work. I mean, he'll either re-refer you or whatever, but I'll communicate with him that that's what's going on.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Material.
Thank you all.
All right.
Have a good
Sorry,
night.
what were you saying, Liz?
Materials as well. Did you mention that?
Yeah. Just make sure the drawings stipulate the materials that you're going to be using.
Yeah.
For the
Okay.
Yep.
I'm good. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Have a good night.
All right. Good night.
Thanks, Roger.
Bye.
Okay.
We have minutes that.
Well, okay, wait. We've got to
Oh.
come out of board business, out of workshop. Do I have a motion to come out of workshop?
I'll move.
Second,
I'll second.
all in favor? Aye.
Who seconded?
I seconded.
Am I on mute?
No,
No.
I just talked over.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, right. So the first thing is we spoke last night to I spoke last night to the Board of Trustees about the fees. I spoke to John first and everything, and basically at offline, Al decided that the easiest and perhaps most direct way of dealing with it for 2021 will be to just have one legal notice in the PCNR and one display ad in the Highlands Current. The costs should be pretty similar to what we're paying now. The legal notices you pay by the line, so they've been more expensive than normal with everything being on Zoom, but hopefully those will balance out at some point. And
Sorry, Sean, can I just interrupt you I'm so sorry. Can I interrupt you for 1 second? So we have making sure it's accurate in the minutes. The legal notice in the PCNR, I caught that. What was the terminology you used for the current?
just a display ad.
Display. Okay, thanks.
The current doesn't do legal notices,
I know.
so it would just be a display ad, which
Got it.
the question was whether we could do a display ad in each paper. John feels most comfortable with us continuing to have a legal notice in the PCNR because that is considered the paper of record for the village. A second, my dog's trying to attack me. But something else that came up last night during the conversation was whether or not the PCNR should continue to be the paper of record for the village or the only paper of record. So if the trustees change what the paper of record is, that will automatically change it within our code because it's the phrase that we use. So that's that. I honestly I can't deal with the discussion of changing our fees or lowering the public hearing fee or any of that stuff at this stage. So we'll just see how.
Yeah, I think, let's just sort of let it go.
This was the most efficient thing for us to do without board approval. So the other just little quick board business thing before we go is my email that I sent everybody about adopting the text of the standards early. How do we feel about this?
My feeling is that we're so close. I think that if we adopt anything or if we approve anything, it should be a finished product, which maybe, because we have the main body of the text and then we have all of the reference items. If we focus on the main portion, maybe we can get that finished. rather than adopting a draft. I mean, I'm not totally sure what the point is.
Well, my motivation is that the text of the document is what is binding. That is the information which people, will be held to for any applications that come in after it's adopted. I think that we're at a point now where we are coming into a new year while Kirsten is making good progress and Lloyd has been speaking with her and it sounds like she's very anxious to get this done just as we are. We still don't know what the revision period is going to be like. We still don't know what types of missing assets we'll have. And we've seen this project, and it's nobody's fault and it's not for lack of trying, but this project has taken a really long time just because it's 5 volunteers doing it when we can do it, So I think because the text itself is confirmed and it is what we want people to be using for guidance, to release it as a adopted, somewhat temporary but adopted document is just going to protect us. It's going to make sure that it is most reflective of the views of the board and our goals. And whether that means we adopt it in January and we have the fully fleshed out, beautifully designed design standards in February, like that would be great. But if we're not going to have the design standards totally done until March or even April, then we're going to be missing out on that sort of first quarter of applications that could be coming in. And then we're going to go through, it's just going to extend the period where we are referring back to which applications were submitted under which set of guidelines and da 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 da. I realize that it's not going to be the most user-friendly thing, and I realize that the photos are really going to help to illustrate a lot of the
pages are off. I remember you saying that.
But it's not a lack of a photo is not does not negate the actual language of the standards.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Go
Sorry,
ahead.
Al.
No, go ahead.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Because I stupidly, and I don't know how, I went through my email, I did the minutes, like I don't know, something I missed. I missed the last meeting. It was so embarrassing.
It's okay.
It really was. So I missed a little piece of this conversation. So you're talking about adopting the minutes. We're voting on them as a board. We're voting on the text. Is that what you're talking about? We're officially adopting them and moving forward. Those are the standards we're using.
We didn't talk about this last week. This is all new information, so you didn't miss out.
I'm sorry. Okay.
What I'm proposing, I just sent an email about it yesterday. What I am proposing.
I read the email. I was just confused by it.
Yeah. We are able to adopt our own standards. They do not have to be approved by the Board of Trustees.
Village board, right. Okay, that much I got.
So when we change a word or add a photo, we can just re-adopt it at the next meeting?
That's my question in a less elegant way.
Yeah, yes, but the question really becomes, you don't want to have a whole bunch of out-of-date documents which may be out there and people, because there's certain, the other thing to keep in mind is that we do have to report this or send a final product up to the state because we did this on their dime.
Right.
So, so, that is in essence, my concern is that I don't want not finalized products floating around there and somebody using the wrong one at the wrong time.
Well, that's
let me just finish the one thing. You're correct that it took this a long time because there were 5 volunteers trying to do this on spare time. But the part that we're dealing with now is not. I mean, we have hired a graphic consultant who she may have other projects that she's dealing with, but this is her job. And so my feeling is that let us talk to Kirsten first. I think that I would like to get some idea of what she thinks it would take, because I do want to have, and if it just means the the main portion as opposed to all of the appendices or whatever we're calling them now, I think that's fine. And we can send that up to SHPO and say, okay, we've done this, the other parts to come later on. But I think that we're much better off rather than having a bunch of different versions. It just, I just see it leading to problems. And if the time difference is a month, then I think it's worth the wait.
Well, just to clarify what I was suggesting, we would only have two versions. There would be one version which is just text, and then there would be another version which is text along with photos, illustrations, and that's it. I mean, the map will have to be the same in both. There probably actually won't even be a map in the first one, because we'll just have people refer to the map that the clerk holds. I don't think that there shouldn't even be a discrepancy between the two versions, because none of the text is going to change. It's just the way that it's presented.
Wouldn't.
We will have to commit to keeping our traps shut during the rest of the design process, because I agree with you. I think that if there were going to be multiple iterations of it, then it's not something that I would be proposing. But I mean, we can see. We can very
let's do this. Let me check in with Kirsten. She said it sounded like she was going to power through everything, even the resource guidelines appendices.
Wow.
Sounded like it was something she could easily do before the holiday. And by before the holiday, I think like next
We didn't
week.
give her much of a budget, so.
Yeah, I mean, if she
We
gets
can see where she is. We can see where she is. I think the limiting factor is going to be us, and I'm certainly guilty of this, finding the time to find the photos and go through and edit.
right, and that's not an insignificant.
It's not going to be her at all. It's not going to be her at all. What else was I going to say? I think Al's idea is a good compromise if we just want to do that first section, and really focus on getting it done. I guess my only concern. I thought the idea was good, but my only concern is that we are diverting our attention to doing an interim copy and then delaying the final one even further. Like, so we say we don't get it out in January, we get it out in February or March, and it's still the text version, and then the final version doesn't come out until June.
Well, I think the text only version would just be, we would just need to make sure that it was the review of the text version would just be to remove references to page numbers or things that don't apply, and just do a formatting.
Are we just asking the question, are we worried about the signage section? Because I heard that mentioned, and
no, I'm not worried about it. I'm not motivated by any specific item in it or anything that it's. I am motivated by making sure that the design guidelines are. To be honest, it is one of the quietest times of year for us.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
And especially this year.
Yeah.
So were they to be released or adopted in January, then people probably wouldn't even start referring to them for 6 weeks or 2 months after that. So that
totally agree.
To me, that's all the more reason to, since there's really not going to be that much of a demand, let's hold off. Let's get a piece complete, and we can say we're done. We're not going to touch that. This is the new standard.
Okay.
And then the resource guides can follow on. I think that once you get the main portion of it finished, and it goes back to what Lloyd was talking about, if we come out with an interim, well, we got more time, we can, at least this way, we all feel the pressure that we need to finish this puppy.
Oh, I want to finish it.
Lloyd,
So,
will you let Kirsten know that we are next, that we, as us, are next meeting on the 23rd? Just not that it has to be done or not that it has to be at a point, but just let her know that the next time we're all going to be together is the 23rd. So whatever she has done at that point, we'll look at.
Yeah, I will do that.
And then we can make a determination then. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
minutes.
wait and see what she does. So
Andrea, I don't have your minutes.
What?
I don't have the minutes that you said that you uploaded them, but
I did.
I don't see them on the drive.
I thought I saw something.
I swear I triple checked that they were on the drive. Okay.
Are they on your
I'm
drive?
sorry. I'm a Luddite. I really I clicked on the add button. Hold on.
That's fine. I
may not have put them in the right place. I have no idea. Hold on. See, I'm looking at, okay, you guys are off camera for me right now, but I'm looking at the drive. It says my drive. It says 11/11/2020.
I see.
But your drive is not the shared drive.
Yeah.
The only thing I see in the shared
I went
drive
into my
is to December.
I do
which
too.
is the one that Kathleen.
So Andrea, if you,
I'm so sorry. I went into my HDRB account on Google.
Oh, well, but see, that's the thing. So that is not, that's not how it works. So what you need to do is you need to actually put it in our shared meeting folder. Otherwise, it's just sitting in your drive. So your
I'm
drive.
So sorry. I logged into my HDRB account on Google.
So all you need to do is share that with one of us, and I mean, share it with me, and I'll dump it in the
But I don't want to be a stupid person who doesn't know how to do this, and I'm really sorry. My 10-year-old is showing me how to do things on Google that I just don't. I've never dealt with before. I'm so sorry. Okay, so
hire him full time.
The easiest thing for you to do is to email it. Just email it to me right now, and then I will, and then I can add it to the drive through
okay, and then I need to find myself a tutorial on fixing this because I've wasted everyone's time and I'm really sorry. Hold on. All right, I'm gonna go into my HDRB account. God, thought I figured it out. Hold on. All right, Sean, I'm only sending it to you.
That's fine.
Yep.
I'm really sorry. I thought I was so confident in how I'd figured it out. Okay. 11/11 is all right. Message. Yep, it's sent. I sent you the email.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. Okay, so add these.
Okay, so
if you want to delay this until what is it, the 23rd?
23rd.
Yeah, I mean that's a voting session, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, but I mean, should we just take a look, or is it? Do you think there's going to be
totally fine with me?
Well, why don't we? Okay, so why don't we do it on the 23rd because we still have to talk about the executive session. So.
All right. Sorry, everyone.
That's okay. So
thought it was up there. Didn't hear anyone say that it wasn't, and so. So
we will on the 23rd. So Andrea, do you think you'll have tonight's minutes as well?
Voting, yeah, so it would be the 11/11 and tonight's.
Right, and then also Kathleen prepared last week's too.
Right.
We'll look at as well. Okay. So as long as we get the new minutes up there, enough time so that people can read them. We'll add it.
Yes, you know, Sean, I'm just gonna email, obviously I already emailed those to you. I'm,
Just email them to me. It's much easier that way.
okay, sorry.
Okay.
I used to be but you're younger than me. Just give it 10 or 15
What
years.
the heck?
I used to be the whiz kid at work, and now I'm just like, how do you effing do this and that?
I never deal with these platforms in my profession, so I just don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I am going to make the motion to go into executive session.
Well, I just, Sean, the one thing to keep in mind is that 23rd is filling up. I mean, we're talking about the public hearing.
Yeah.
We're talking about, you know, the having a workshop, I guess, with 212 Main Street.
If she decides to.
Oh, by the way, we do in fact need to review the 2014 project. And I would encourage that you talk with Kathleen because she had some strong opinions on this,
Okay.
on what, you know, she was proposing.
That's fine. I think we can probably get through 3 sets of minutes that night as well.
Okay.
And here, I agree with Sean, and here's why. Because now it's finally, you guys can edit
Directly.
the document online. You don't have to, like, you know,
Yeah.
I was stupid. I didn't realize you.
Yeah, they're both in there. So as long as everybody has their track changes on, we can just do them. People can do them as soon as they're uploaded, and we can just review them.
Yes. So you can edit them in the Google Drive. That much I do know, as I've learned. You don't have to give me pieces of paper. You don't have to give me pieces of paper that I then upload. So yeah, do your edits, and we're good.
All right. Did I hear a motion to go into executive session?
That was from Sean.
All right.
I will second.
And that is to discuss
I made the
candidates.
motion.
Right.
Yeah.
To discuss candidates for replacement or candidates for the vacant board seat.
Sean moved. I will second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Michael.
Okay.
We'll,
so Michael, you're
Good night, all.
able
yes.
to leave.
Good night.
We'll keep track of when we finish.
I'm
Thank
writing
you,
it down.
Michael. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the recording.